You ever get that split second where your gut sinks before your mind even processes what's happening? Like your body sounds the alarm before your thoughts catch up? Yeah, that was me on an ordinary Monday afternoon, parked at a red light, staring straight ahead, doing absolutely nothing dramatic. My phone started buzzing in the cup holder, like it had a personal grudge against my peace. I glanced down. One text. Short, too short. Hey, not trying to freak you out, but there's a woman in your garage. Says she's with the HOA. I froze, staring at the screen. Read it once, then again, slower, like maybe I'd skipped a word or misunderstood the sentence. A woman, in my garage, not knocking, not waiting politely on the porch, not leaving some passive-aggressive note taped to my door in Comic Sans. No, she was inside, and instantly I knew exactly who it was. Every neighborhood has one, the self-appointed enforcer of suburban righteousness, the person who carries a clipboard like it's both a badge and a weapon. In our neighborhood, her name was Marilyn Price. No one ever called her Marilyn. Behind closed doors, she was just that HOA woman, the kind who smiles with her mouth but never her eyes, the kind who memorizes bylaws better than her own family's birthdays, the kind who gets just a little too excited when she spots a violation. Living near someone like that is always an adjustment. You learn how to line up your trash cans just right. You trim your hedges more often than you want to. You suddenly become very interested in the clouds whenever you see her walking her dog, because you know she's mentally calculating the height of your grass. But nothing prepared me for the idea that she crossed the one line you don't cross. Private property. My garage isn't just a place where boxes go to be forgotten. It's my sanctuary, my quiet zone, the one space that's fully, undeniably mine. And yes, I keep things in there that aren't meant for public viewing, not because they're illegal, but because they're personal, valuable, and absolutely nobody else's business. I didn't respond to the text. I threw the car into drive, blew through the red light, I'll admit it, and headed straight home, my heart pounding harder with every block. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my jaw was clenched so tight my teeth actually hurt. And there she was. The garage door stood wide open, right in the middle of my garage. Like she owned the place, stood Marilyn, hands on her hips, clipboard tucked under one arm, pen already uncapped. She had that look, the chin tilted just high enough to project authority, lips pressed into a thin, satisfied line. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. "Oh, good," she said, glancing up from her clipboard like I'd arrived late to a scheduled meeting. "You're home." I stood there for a moment, keys still dangling from my fingers, honestly wondering if this was real or one of those stress dreams where you wake up sweating. "What?" I finally said, because that was all my brain could manage. "What are you doing in my garage?" She sighed. Actually sighed like I was the problem. "I'm conducting an inspection," she said, tapping the clipboard. "We receive reports of potential HOA violations." Inspection. She said it like it was perfectly normal, like walking into someone's garage uninvited was just another item on her to-do list. "You broke into my property." I said, heat climbing up my neck. "You didn't notify me. You didn't ask. You don't have a key." "Well," she replied, waving a dismissive hand. The door was unlocked. That's when I felt it. The slow, deep burn that starts behind her eyes and crawls down your spine. Unlocked does not mean public access. Unlocked does not mean come on in. Unlocked definitely does not mean play HOA detective. I stepped forward and pulled the garage door all the way up, the motor whining as it lifted, bright light flooding the space. And that's when everything changed. Marilyn, confident, smug, absolutely certain she was about to catch me red-handed, froze. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. She took one step back, then another, like the concrete beneath her had betrayed her. She'd been expecting chaos. Junk. A half-finished project. Something she could point to and declare, "There, that's not allowed." Instead, she walked into something else entirely. My garage was pristine. Rows of restored vintage motorcycles gleamed under the lights, polished enough to reflect them back. A classic coupe rested neatly along one wall, paint flawless, chrome shining. Custom-built shelving displayed collectibles with surgical precision, action figures sealed in original packaging, first edition comics protected in archival cases, rare memorabilia arranged with museum-level care. Every inch was intentional, every item documented, maintained, cherished. This wasn't clutter. This was a collection. Her clipboard slipped from her fingers and smacked the concrete with sharp crack. Aye, she stammered, her voice suddenly thin, fragile. This can't be. Her knees buckled. No exaggeration. She actually collapsed to the floor, palms catching her weight, as if her body had simply given up pretending she was in control. I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe, watching the realization wash over her in slow motion. Yes, I said calmly, maybe a little too calmly. It can be. She looked up at me like I just pulled back a curtain on a world she never knew existed. These are all mine, I continued, legally purchased, properly stored, fully compliant with HOA guidelines. For just a second, she tried to reclaim her authority. She pointed weakly toward the motorcycles. They take up a lot of space, she said. And those collectibles, they're not standard. They're unsightly. I laughed, not loud, just a short, sharp laugh that slipped out before I could stop it. Unsightly, I repeated, gesturing around me, on my property. And that right there was the exact moment the balance tipped. Because Marilyn hadn't just misjudged my garage. She misjudged me. And she was about to learn very publicly that entitlement only works as long as people tolerate it. Now, pause the movie for a second, because this is where a lot of folks get confused. And honestly, this is where HOA Karens like Marilyn get their confidence in the first place. According to standard procedure, an HOA does not have unlimited authority over your property. They don't get to wander into your garage like it's a public storage unit. Even in the most aggressive HOA communities, inspections come with rules, written notice, specific reasons, scheduled access, and, most important of all, your consent. From a legal standpoint, what Marilyn did wasn't just rude. It was risky. A garage attached to your home is considered part of your private residence in most states. That means entering it without permission can cross straight into trespassing, regardless of whether the door was unlocked. Unlocked is not an invitation. Courts have been very clear about that. And here's where psychology kicks in, because this isn't just about rules. It's about people. This is a psychological trap. HOA enforcers like Marilyn often rely on intimidation, not actual authority. The clipboard, the jargon, the confident tone, it's all theater. They count on homeowners not knowing the difference between real bylaws and self-appointed power. The moment you hesitate, apologize, or start explaining yourself, they feel validated. And here's the real kicker. People like that expect chaos. They expect violations. They expect to feel superior. When they walk into order, preparation, and calm confidence, it short-circuits their entire mental script. That's why Marilyn collapsed. Not because of stuff, but because her imagined dominance evaporated in an instant. The lesson is simple. Knowledge plus calm is armor. You don't have to yell. You don't have to threaten. When you know the rules better than the person trying to weaponize them, their power disappears fast. All right, analysis over. Back to the story. Because Marilyn still had a clipboard and one last pathetic attempt to use it. She stayed on the floor longer than I expected. Not because she was hurt, she wasn't, but because she didn't know which version of herself to stand back up as. The confident inspector was gone. The clipboard warrior had short-circuited. What remained was a woman desperately trying to rebuild authority out of thin air. Eventually, she pushed herself upright, smoothing her blazer as if dignity could be pressed back into place. Her cheeks were flushed now, not exactly with embarrassment, but with something sharper, resentment. I recognized it instantly. That moment when someone realizes they played their hand wrong, and instead of backing down, they doubled down. She cleared her throat. Well, she said, grabbing the clipboard like a life raft, regardless of how impressive this all is, the HOA still reserves the right to... No, I cut in, not raising my voice, not stepping forward, Just a word, delivered like a period at the end of a sentence. It doesn't. That stopped her cold. I walked past her slowly, deliberately, and shut off the garage light above the motorcycle row, then flipped it back on again. Chrome flashed. Engines gleamed. Everything exactly where it belonged. You don't have inspection authority, I said. You never did. And even if you did, you don't get to break into my garage to exercise it. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. We receive complaints, she said. Multiple people are concerned about safety. Ah, there it was. Concern. The word people hide behind when they don't want to admit the truth. Concern about what? I asked. She waved vaguely around the room. The vehicles. The amount of equipment. It feels excessive. Excessive. What she really meant wasn't dangerous. It was threatening. Threatening because excess implies lost control. It implies someone else has something you don't. Knowledge, resources, discipline, passion. And for someone like Marilyn, that's unbearable. I nodded slowly. So, let me get this straight, I said. Someone complained. You didn't notify me, didn't schedule anything, didn't involve the board, and decided the correct response was to enter my property without permission. She crossed her arms again, tried to rebuild her posture like it might magically restore authority. I was acting in the neighborhood's best interest. I smiled, and that's when I slipped my phone out of my pocket. Her eyes snapped to it immediately. I already called the HOA office, I said casually, while you were inspecting. That did it. The color drained from her face even faster this time. You did what? Yeah, I replied. Turns out they were very interested to hear about an unauthorized entry, especially from someone who isn't on the enforcement committee. She took a step back. I am a board member. Former. I corrected, as of about 10 minutes ago, according to the woman I spoke with. Silence settled into the garage, thick and heavy. Marilyn glanced around like the walls might come to her defense. They didn't. You can't do this, she said, her voice tight. You're overreacting. From a legal standpoint, this is the exact moment people like Marilyn reveal their entire playbook. When authority fails, they pivot to minimization. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Relax. Why are you so upset? I didn't break into your garage, she added quickly. The door was unlocked. I let that sit for a beat. Then I said, You're still on my property. Without permission. Her jaw clenched. I suggest, I continued evenly, you leave now. She hesitated, just long enough to choose wrong. I'm not finished documenting, she said, lifting the clipboard again. This behavior is exactly the kind of hostility the HOA is worried about. And that was it. I stepped forward, reached out and calmly but firmly took the clipboard from her hands. No yanking, no drama, just removing the prop. You're done, I said. And if you don't walk out of my garage right now, the next call I make won't be to the HOA. Her eyes flicked to the driveway, to the open door, to the fact that two neighbors were now standing across the street, pretending not to stare, while staring very hard. She swallowed and didn't say another word. Marilyn walked past me, heels clicking sharp and angry against the concrete, and stepped back into daylight. She never had a right to enter from the start. I shut the garage door behind her, slowly, deliberately. The sound echoed like a final verdict. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was the HOA manager. She didn't sugarcoat it. What happened today was unacceptable. Marilyn had no authority to conduct any inspection. They received similar complaints about her behavior before. Similar. That word mattered. They apologized formally. Everything was documented. I received written confirmation that my property was fully compliant and that no HOA representative was permitted to enter without written notice and my explicit consent. Marilyn was stripped of any inspection-related role entirely. No clipboard. No investigations. No more self-appointed enforcement. Word spread fast. Too fast. By that evening, my doorbell rang. Then rang again. Neighbors. Curious ones. Friendly ones. People who'd lived next to me for years and never knew what was behind that garage door. I gave tours by invitation only. People were impressed. They asked genuine questions, shared stories, showed respect. Marilyn, meanwhile, became something else altogether, a cautionary tale. Conversation stopped when she entered a room. People whisper when she passed. The authority she once wielded evaporated overnight, replaced by quiet embarrassment and very public accountability. From that day forward, she never even glanced at my garage. I installed security cameras anyway. Not out of fear, out of principle. Clear boundaries matter. And every now and then, when I hear a garage door open somewhere down the street, I can't help but smile, remembering the exact moment entitlement ran headfirst into preparation and lost. After everything settled, after the calls stopped, after Marilyn faded back into the background where she belonged, I found myself standing alone in the garage one night, lights humming softly, surrounded by years of work, grease, patience, and obsession. And it hit me. This was never really about a garage. It never is. Situations like this are almost always about boundaries. And what happens when someone believes they're entitled to cross them without consequence? People like Marilyn thrive in gray areas. They rely on uncertainty, on homeowners who avoid confrontation, on fear fines, letters, escalation. They're betting you'll fold before they ever have to prove anything. Most of the time, that bet pays off. It's a psychological trap. Authority doesn't always come with credentials. Sometimes it comes with confidence, tone, posture, the performance of power. When no one challenges it, it grows quietly, aggressively, until one day someone feels comfortable walking into your space and telling you what you're allowed to love. From a legal standpoint, knowing your rights isn't about being combative. It's about being calm, prepared, grounded. I didn't win that situation by yelling or threatening. I won because I knew the rules better than the person trying to weaponize them. Once that imbalance flipped, everything else followed naturally. HOAs are meant to maintain shared spaces, not control personal identity. They exist to protect property values, not suppress individuality. The moment enforcement becomes personal, emotional, or ego-driven, it stops being governance and starts being harassment. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Marilyn didn't wake up one day and decide to be a villain. She became one slowly, reinforced every time someone complied without question, every time authority went unchecked. That's how these dynamics form, not through malice alone, but through silence. I also learned something about myself. Preparation is a form of self-respect. Taking care of your space, your passions, your boundaries sends a message long before you ever speak. When someone steps into your world expecting weakness and finds order instead, the power dynamic collapses instantly. Maybe that's why this story resonated with so many neighbors afterward. We've all dealt with Marilyn in one form or another, at work, in families, in communities. Someone who mistakes proximity to power for ownership of it. So I'll leave you with this. Has anyone ever tried to assert control over something that wasn't theirs? Did you push back or let it slide because it felt easier? And if you're dealing with an HOA now, ask yourself, do you actually know the rules or are you just assuming they do? Because once you understand that difference, everything changes. That garage is still my sanctuary, still locked, still mine. And Marilyn? She still walks the neighborhood sometimes, clipboard free, quiet, careful, a reminder that entitlement only works until it meets preparation, and someone finally decides to close the door.